On average, you'll have to wait 31 days to see an OBGYN. And if you're dealing with an infection or outbreak, you know you need care fast. That's where WISP comes in. Connect with a U.S. licensed provider online and pick up safe, effective treatment at your local pharmacy that same day. Plus, get birth control and more delivered in all 50 states. Take control with comprehensive sexual and reproductive care, all from your phone. WISP. That's hellowisp.com. The waiting room can wait.
Okay, we're back with Mike and Ken, and my uncle's escaped Alcatraz. This is episode, I think, I don't even know, it's like
54.
54. Mike, I always count on you to keep track of it. You always sorry about that misstep last week when I posted it. It was like,
hard to keep track.
It's hard to keep track.
You're doing too. It's not just
us. Yeah. So I don't know what it is, but sometimes my brain just fails me. So appreciate that. It didn't take me long to fix it though. And we wanted to talk a little bit about our fan that we had on yet last week, because I thought he was really interesting. I mean, he was really brought a thoughtful kind of perspective, and he's really kind of doing his own investigation, like our other fan who we had on too. But he really kind of dove down deep, and he's been listening for obviously since the beginning, and also the other documentary. And we're going to try to get the person who did that documentary. What was it? It was a YouTube documentary, correct?
No, it was actually on the Travel Channel.
Travel Channel. Okay, so Travel
Mission Declassified.
Right.
Mission Declassified. Okay, cool. And I don't even know where the Travel Channel is these days. Everything's so much contraction. I don't even know if it's still around. So Mike, you said you're reaching out to him. We'll try to get him on the podcast. Love to hear his perspective.
Yeah.
And but yeah, Jaimie was really cool. The fact that he's a musician, he's kind of an artist, and he's kind of taking like this technical look at everything that went on that we talk about, and he was pretty much on our team, I would say, as far as the theories. And it was funny how he was just kind of, humorizing art a little bit, like we all do, because we love art. But what did you think that what he had to say, Ken and Mike?
Well, I love the way that he also talked to Michael Dykes, and Michael, shared with him the same thing he shared with me, the junk science that he tried to, sell me on why those two men in that photograph was not John and Clarence, and his attempt at trying to be a professional measuring hand person, I guess.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know people, I wondered if they just thought, well, that was just me saying that. But now that, he actually said this to other people, it really kind of backs up what I was trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it definitely backs up what you're saying, and the fact that we talked about this with Jaimie, but and we talked to like a lot of law enforcement in doing all the podcasts and documentaries we do. But it's interesting how sometimes when the junk science is not working for you, it becomes junk science, and then but if it gets you to get a conviction or helps your case, it's no longer junk science. So it's all in the matter of the perspective that you're using it. Because we've had that conversation numerous times with law enforcement about, polygraph tests, certain types of gunshot residue testing. They'll say it's antiquated, it's junk science, but if you get some gunshot residue that's going to prove your case, your prosecution is going to use it big time.
And this kind of goes back to when Art was on the show, when he was dismissive of the photograph. Of course, he doesn't believe it's John and Clarence.
Yeah.
And Cliff Fish's account of what happened on Angel Island and other incidences that he says they're wrong. They just didn't get it right. And the quote unquote science that we're using to bolster our side of the argument, he was dismissive of. But then he also said that some big announcement was coming. It's just, stay tuned. And of course, we're still waiting for that if it ever comes out. And at this point, it hasn't. that would just kind of close the case, that once we knew what he knew, then we'll know definitively that they didn't make it out of the bay. So the only thing that would validate his side was he couldn't use testimonies, he couldn't use photographs, he couldn't use other information other than DNA. DNA is the one thing that everyone understands and knows this is definitive. So short of DNA, he's going to have to rely on the things on his side that he's dismissive of ours.
Yeah, and the first thing he said was that there's no DNA.
Right.
He actually said that.
Well, the other thing is that on the History Channel show, didn't he look surprised about the two photos, about the photo and the right? So he looked like he was shocked, and he was like, "This is legit," right? So that was his initial reaction. Okay, Art, we love you, but we gotta question this because
that was
I'm confused. Why did he have that reaction to the photo after you guys did the analysis, and now he's like, "Oh, it's not real."
Yeah, that was not a staged. We didn't shoot that but one time, and that was the very first time he ever saw that photo.
You can tell by his reaction. He was like,
Yep.
I mean, it was a natural. I'm a TV producer. I know when there's a natural reaction and when it's produced. That was a real reaction.
Very authentic.
And that was the reason why when I showed it to the producers, they did not want me in any way sharing it with Art because they wanted, that was an unscripted
Sure.
show, and they loved the first reaction.
Yeah, because it was real.
Yeah, you don't want him to prepare.
No, but the fact that he had that initial reaction, which it's all over his face, he can't hide that one. It was just clearly that he was like, "Oh my God, maybe this is them. This is them."
Well,
now
and you can see it in Marshall Dykes' face. We show it to him.
So it's just strange that it's like so adamant. No, now.
Yeah. And that's what Jaimie was saying. He was astonished too, because he, granted, Jaimie, none of us are, trained law enforcement, forensic experts, but we do have eyes. Okay. We do have eyes. And then some of the people have been commenting on the YouTube channel and stuff like that. I mean, they all, when they see the other photograph, they're like, listen, and they said the same thing. He goes, listen, I'm not a trained person. He goes, but that 100% looks like an older John Anglin. He goes, unless there's like some sort of doppelganger, and there could be a doppelganger out there. They're very well, we all got them, and very similar, but it's astonishing that it would come from that area of the world. Number one, like if someone said, hey, listen, I found this guy in Latvia, looks just like John Anglin, and it's just like, well, let's, can't really draw the lines from there and there. How did he get to Latvia? Could he have gotten to Latvia? Yes. But the fact that it's in Brazil, this person
in the area
of question.
I mean, Brazil's a huge country. It's not like a small place. It's massive.
It's most of South America, So it's like,
I thought, and Jaimie was, I thought it was interesting that he took it upon himself to get in touch with Michael Dykes and question him. He questioned him. He wasn't afraid to question him. I like that.
Yeah.
And I thought he was a very thoughtful person who had a real passion for this too, which I enjoyed having him on.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that, because you were talking about, Jaimie being on the show and following us from the beginning, and a lot of the people who respond and write comments when they watch our episodes, the thing that they appreciate is that we're trying to do this from as much as we can, scientific, evidence-based argument or discussion. That it's not just pet theories that we're throwing around and, well, this is what I think happened. Well, I think this happened because this makes more sense to me, without backing it up with information that's actionable information. And we wrote the book that way, obviously, with all the evidence that we provide, and then that has lent itself to this podcast where we're doing the same thing, where we have the photographs, we have the testimonies, we're bringing in forensic specialists, we're bringing in Ken's family that's corroborating elements of our story. We brought in the former guard or the former inmate when Alfred escaped, and he was corroborating elements of our story. So it's not just us, or Charles Herman was corroborating elements of our story.
Yeah.
We're going to bring people on it's just more evidence to show that what we're saying is correct.
Mhm.
And so, and people appreciate that because they, like, millions of people, they wonder what happened to the escapees. Did they make it? And it's just sort of a thought, and then they move on. But for those that are really trying to investigate, we're not just throwing out pet theories. We're trying to base it on actual information that can be investigated, and hopefully will be investigated further in Brazil should the opportunity arise. And they tell us, we just thank you for doing this, because we're really trying to get to the bottom of this in a way that is beyond dispute, and they value that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, you're not forensic experts. We're not detectives and everything. You guys put out a book that did amazing detective and forensic work on the escape. And you don't have any training doing that. But what you do have training is the fact that you kept on asking the questions. You kept on digging for all of the information, the documents, the conversations, all of the stuff. I mean, all of the treasure trove of information that Kenny you had with your family. I mean, you can't ignore that. And that's what makes me kind of, and the fact that you have documentation and testimony from people in your family and other people where, they were watching you guys, they were watching your family, that they were targeting South America as the place where they are, that they probably more than likely sent people down there.
Right.
And the fact that Rod was talking about, we have Interpol red notices on these guys. That's only going to come up if they do something.
Right.
If they get stopped by law enforcement, if they go, at that point in their lives, they were keeping their noses pretty clean.
Right.
And if they didn't, they were paying off the right people to make sure no one found them.
Well, and after,
which is easily done down in that area.
After marrying and having children and becoming citizens of Brazil, that changes the equation a little bit too, because Interpol is not going to be able to go down and pull out a Brazilian citizen and send them to another country.
Yeah.
I mean, they could if he was, if he was not a citizen, but like someone who just fled a Nazi, and didn't marry. But having children, marrying, owning land, that pretty much changes the whole equation to me.
Yeah. And it was interesting to hear from Jaimie in the perspective that, he had a lot of the same questions. I can't remember. Did he say he read you guys' book? I can't remember.
I don't remember asking him.
I don't think he did. I don't think he mentioned that. He's just been watching the podcast.
Oh, okay.
No, and he started this during the pandemic, so it was before the book came out.
Yeah, he started when he started watching.
He just started getting involved when he had some spare time.
Yeah, but obviously, if he's listened to the podcast, we go through the entire book, so he's got most of the information. He doesn't have all the exposition, but he's got the nuts and bolts of what the book is. As far as what your research, we've talked about it, ad infinitum. But it was interesting. It must feel good for you guys that there someone on the other side of the planet, is hearing what you have to say, and it all makes sense to them as well.
And I'm glad that he brought up the John's and Clarence's possible hiding place in Tabate, which is about 20 or so miles away from Monteiro Lobato, thereabouts. I'm not sure the mileage, but it's not too far from the two locations. And I mentioned last week that when I saw the documentary, this was before Ken had told me where they were hiding further north. So I didn't know how close it was. And I asked Ken, I said, how close was he? And he says, well, he's in the neighborhood. He's kind of close. I was like, okay. And I just sort of dismissed it because it wasn't the same place that Ken was saying at the time. But now it's gotten me to rethink that a little bit and I mentioned this last week, that this is a possible other place that they hid. And then there were probably others after that they would stay for a certain amount of time, hide out there. And then when they were starting to feel like, maybe it's time to get going again, go to another place and another place and another place. so that they wouldn't get caught, obviously.
Absolutely. You never stay in one place for long. And you're on the running like that. As soon as people start to get to know you, you're like, all right, I got to go. As soon as you start getting comfortable, I would imagine you're like, got to go, got to mix it up.
Right. And so it opened up the possibility to me that that's obviously another place to search. And especially when it was, and I remember during the documentary, it was known as the Farm of the Americans. So obviously it had that reputation in the community because it was so unusual for Americans to be there that became the name of the place. It wasn't just a farm. It was, oh yeah, that's where the Americans are, because there are no other Americans around. So it really set it apart.
Well, and we know that, according to Fred Breezy, that the farm was originally owned by an Englishman. He's the one who settled the farm or lived there long enough to go and register it in his name. And then John and Clarence purchased it from him. So, like Mike said, that they could have easily just assumed that the Englishman was an American. Maybe that's the reason why they named it the Farm of the Americans. Now all of a sudden you got 2 more Americans or 3 Americans that are coming in and purchasing it, if that truly is the location. So definitely would be a good source to go to. So,
yeah.
It wouldn't hurt to check it out for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, when I lived in Sicily, I was like the only American for the whole island that was living there. Was not a tourist, I mean, they remember that stuff. It's like they're not going to forget. Like they probably told their grandkids there were these 3 Americans that lived here. We never really knew what they did or whatever. I mean, that's just something that's like just what they do. They're very nosy and they're curious because they never see, Americans in that area or that village or whatever. It's rare.
That was what was so, to me, convincing about Montero Lobato was, we actually found an individual who remembered 3 Americans. He was 10 years old. So
that's what I'm saying.
He wasn't like so young that he heard it from somebody else. He remembers it himself.
I believe that.
That would have put it in there about the same time frame. And, Mike and I go up, we find, to me, I think, like Mike said, the most important thing was that U.S. penny on the top of a place that Americans should not have been at that time frame. And it's all these items, all these things point to this location. So, it might not be in that one general location. They might have moved. They might have had other homes. I don't know. So
I would imagine they moved a lot.
Right.
And they had probably a couple safe houses, maybe more than 2, because you're always looking. I would imagine they were always looking over their shoulder.
Well, and we talked about at least the house of Montero Lobato, how the house in the photograph, which we were able to find, Ken found it using Google Maps. It's on a hill. It's probably 30 feet up from the road, and it's the only house that is situated on that kind of a geography. Because you can look on Google Maps all over, and nearly all the houses are literally right on the road. They just go right up to it, and they're all just lined up. It's sort of because it's in the mountain. The road is very serpentine, and the houses just follow the road. They're just right there. But this is the only house that's up on a hill, so it's away from the direct line of sight. If anybody's going there, they can see the house from the road, but they can't see up there. There's a lot of foliage, and people walking around up there could be hidden very easily. So if I were John and Clarence and Frank Morris, that's the house I would want to be, because you're off the main road,
and you can see what's coming below.
Right, you can look down, but it's hard to see up.
Yeah, no, it was. Definitely. Well, Jaimie was very cool.
Yes.
And Jaimie, I'm sure you're listening, thank you for coming on. And just drop us a line, see if you have the book or anything. I'm just curious if you ever read the book. But so another thing that happened, Mike, you sent me this article this morning.
Yep.
And we've been talking about this because, a few weeks ago, Trump made this huge announcement. He wants to reopen Alcatraz Island. And I don't know what he wants to do there. Just put the worst of the worst, or if he's going to use it as a detention center, whatever it is. And, as with everything that Trump says, I mean, he blurts these things out just to kind of rattle the media, not sure if it's true or not. And then Mike sends me an article today. It looks like they're preparing for that. So Mike, tell tell us what the article said? I think it was in the Guardian.
Yeah, it actually started. I saw on YouTube. It was actually from a local in San Francisco. We have several television news outlets, and it was one of those outlets that interviewed the head of the Bureau of Prisons that came out to San Francisco after Trump made the announcement. And the article essentially says the same thing. They're kind of two stories saying the same thing. That they're actually looking at Alcatraz to fulfill President Trump's wishes to reopen it as a federal prison, because, for most people, myself included, when I first heard that, it's the initial like, oh, that's an interesting idea. Reopen the prison and, make it a functional facility again for, America's worst criminals. But then you start thinking about the logistics and what's going to be involved to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's, it's like the adage, the devil's in the details.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. It's going to be billions of dollars. It's going to take years and years, and they're going to have to, retrofit everything. They're going to have to, there's not much room to build anything new. So they're going to have to raise the buildings and rebuild them again, and just, the cost and so forth. And that's not even talking about all the environmental stuff that they'd have to do. Plus, all the different agencies that are going to be fighting him tooth and nail, including probably the Parks Department. They get $60 million a year from all the tourism that's involved, and they're not going to just walk away from that and without a fight. But then when I saw this news clip, they're serious. And this article that I sent you was saying the same thing, that the Bureau of Prisons, they're actually looking at the prison and they're starting to do some analysis of what it's going to take to reopen it. So this is not a joke. This is real.
Yeah. And what was interesting article too, they sent engineers out there to kind of look at the land, and looking at the building, talking about how they can retrofit it easier than they thought they could be with like these new materials and stuff. So they're exploring new types of materials that wouldn't impact the island as much. So they're looking at it, like you said, deadpan serious, which is, the implications for that is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I always thought Alcatraz was a national park, but it's not. I was reading the other day that it's managed by the Golden Gate Park Society, but it's actually still owned by the federal government. So it could actually be, hard to believe, but it could actually be, moved back into the federal prison system, and it could actually happen. But gosh, it's such a, monumental task to get that prison up to speed.
Absolutely.
I know.
Imagine how long it would take to do it.
I've been to most of the California state prisons, because when I did the series Lockup, like in the eons ago for MSNBC, I've been to San Quentin, I've been to Corcoran, I've been to both Folsoms, because there's New Folsom and Old Folsom, and a lot of these facilities, even the ones that were made in the last 20, 30 years, are not that great a shape. Even the newest ones, but like, San Quentin, that thing is ancient.
Well, ironically, we were there when they were disassembling San Quentin's death row, and they're turning that whole facility into, I don't know, a rehabilitation center, or I don't even know if they're going to keep it open in the long term, which is interesting because that prison, biggest death row in the world, closed, and now they're going to reopen Alcatraz.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because when we were up there and no one was talking about this. I don't know if did you hear about it, Mike, when like about a year ago that they were decommissioning death row?
No.
So
no one did.
You live in the area and you didn't even know what was happening.
That's what we were reporting on, because no one was talking about this. This was like so quiet. The media didn't say a blip about it, but we were there when it was actually being dismantled. Laura, our serial killer forensic criminologist, she's been going up there for 10 years interviewing serial killers to get locations of missing victims, and we were there with her because she talks to these serial killers literally every freaking day, and they were all freaking out because they were going to be put into general population, so they thought they were all going to get killed the second that they got moved. And we were there for what, like a week,
and no one was
reporting on this. And then Newsom got mad because we sent him a letter, and we were like, well, we're here and we're the only ones reporting on it.
He didn't want anybody to know
and
about
he didn't want anyone to know about it.
See, I thought the plan was, and that they were moving. I mean, theoretically, you're going to move death row, and it's never really been. These guys still have death sentences, so their cases have not been changed or anything. But at the same time, I thought they were, because it's that prison's on some pretty valuable real estate. It's right on the water in the bay. It's got a beautiful view of San Francisco. So I think, to me, it's like he's getting death row out of there. Eventually, he's going to move because the San Quentin's, it's very old and it's antiquated, and it's just like it's like an old school prison. It's just run down, and it's not it's not safe for the guards. It's not safe for the inmates. It's just very it should be closed. But I think the plan is for him to kind of sell that off as some like a nice big chunk of $1 billion real estate on the water, because it takes up a lot of space there. But at the same point, what's interesting is happening is because we've been talking to on our other podcast, some of the death row inmates, and they're all going to be getting, because death row.
This is really scary.
This is really scary. These are some bad people. They're all starting to get contacted for resentencing, which means that we're
talking serial killers, like multiple,
the worst
and
of the
victims
worst
that are still still out there. And ironically, the only media coverage that was done on San Quentin was in the UK. Newsom did an hour episode for Sky News.
Yeah.
But that was it, which I think is really interesting in comparison to what's going on with Trump, because he said this thing about Alcatraz. We didn't really know if that was true or not. And now it looks like they're moving in the direction of doing this. So thinking back to your uncles, Ken, what do you think about that happening? And maybe you can give them some advice on how they can protect themselves from no one escaping.
Yeah, well, because like basically that island is kind of a mausoleum for your family. I mean, it's like the last resting place of your uncles. That where you knew about them and you had contact with them.
Well, crazy. Back when Alcatraz was open and it housed people, no one really thought that you could swim from the island to the mainland or to Angel Island. But now, every year, 2,000 people do it.
Yeah.
In the race. So, if you're looking
yourself
for
included,
Am I
self-included, Iron Man?
So if you're looking for a place to put someone and go, okay, this is inescapable, and you're not going to be able to get off, and you're not going to be able to swim to shore, we know that's not true. So and two, I mean, I don't know. It's I got mixed feelings about it. I mean, I enjoy going out there whenever I'm in San Francisco. I feel like I have a connection to it.
You do
more than most people, and so to see it reopened and not ever be able to go back out there again, I don't know. Pretty much would change it, because they would pretty much, like Mike said, have to tear most of it down, rebuild it, and it just wouldn't be the same Alcatraz.
Yeah,
that's true. I mean, if they're going to be tearing down history.
Yeah.
Well,
I was going to say, if you want something to stick bad people on it while you're waiting to ship them out of the country, take an aircraft carrier, old aircraft carrier, stick it out
barge,
the river, and you got a whole city down below there. You can make cells and stick them in there.
Yeah, they have prison barges.
Take the boat over to wherever you want to take them to and unload them.
Yeah.
Well, one of the ramifications of Trump's announcement is that the numbers going to the island have gone up since then. Right. That the number of visitors each day is rising, because people are wondering, hey, are they going to close it down soon? Are we going to still have access to the island? So let's go while we still can, because they want to see it. They want to experience, the mystique of Alcatraz, and they're worried that at some point it's going to be cut off, which it could be. They could be like a year from now, they can say, okay, we have an active plan in place, and we have to start, retrofitting and start doing all the pre-stuff or whatever, or 2 years, 3 years, whatever it's going to take to do all that. So they're wanting to check it out. It's the thing in the Bay Area is Alcatraz is part of the culture. You
Yeah.
know, it's the Golden Gate Bridge, it's the
Yeah.
cable cars, it's Fisherman's
Yeah.
Wharf, it's
Alcatraz. I mean, it's the first thing, you know, when I first moved there when I was like 17, was one of the first things we did was go take the boat to Alcatraz and see it.
You go to
because it's like this, you know, mythology of the city. I mean, it's just part of it.
Well, I mean, how many movies have been made that are Alcatraz themed in some way?
Yeah.
You know, over the years. I mean, I saw a movie in, I think it was 1938, that was on Turner Classic Movies. It was called Alcatraz, and I watched it, and it was, I mean, it was a very fictionalized version of prison life, but that was the very first movie made about, and it had opened in 1934. The movie was made 4 years after, so already from an early time, it already had this idea of mystery and intrigue, and there was a draw toward it. And then, of course, since then, other movies have been done.
Yeah.
Since then, and so you know, countless TV shows, books, many books. You know, there was, after the escape, there was that song called "A Mile and a Quarter," talking about the three escaping, and so it kind of reached sort of like, it was like a folk tune that they wrote, and so they would be losing a lot if they made Alcatraz, you know, just a regular prison again, because there's just something about it that it's just an interesting place just in of itself. It's very mysterious.
Yeah, I mean, just the iconic names in prisons, like, you know, Alcatraz is at the top in the world. In the United States, you know, you have Folsom, you have Sing Sing. Sing Sing was a big, you know, in New York. And then what's the other one that was? Leavenworth at the federal prison.
Right.
But most people don't really know what Leavenworth is. You know, nowadays, I think the equivalent of the worst, I think it used to be Pelican Bay. That was a really, like, when I was doing the series, that was considered like the Alcatraz of the current system. That was like 20 years ago. I don't know which one takes it now, you know, because Corcoran's pretty up there, but Port Corcoran's like a push button prison. You know, now you have all these push button prisons where, you know, there's like no contact with the inmates. They just go walk them through sally ports by just pushing buttons. But yeah, I mean, Alcatraz has always been at the pinnacle because of the fact that it's on an island and it's surrounded by water. I mean, it's something out of a novel. It's like medieval too. It's like it comes from that old medieval time. You know, where's the prison? Oh, it's in the, you know, there's a moat around it.
That's what I'm saying. It's like mythological. It's like something that when you go to San Francisco, you're like, oh, we should go to Alcatraz because it's got this lore about it. It's famous for that.
Yeah.
It would be weird if it was reopened, but I don't know.
And, you know, what would that look like? I mean, because like you said, how many was the max was like, how many, like a couple hundred that were there?
250, 260.
250, 260. I mean, they'd probably have to go, they can't go out, so they would have to go up, you know, as far as.
Well, there are places that you can, because I was looking at the island and because I was thinking, because, you know, President Trump said that he was going to expand it to house, you know, more inmates than what it had, you know, in its original form. And there's a place on the south side of the island that used to be where the guards lived. There were housing units, like apartment complexes, kind of a thing. That's where the guards and the families lived. They're gone. They're not there anymore. So it's sort of a flattened area. They can obviously build it there. And then you have the old industrial buildings. There are two of them, the new industries building and the old industries building, where they used to make things, fabricate things, you know, where inmates could work and earn some money. While they were at Alcatraz, the buildings are still there, but they're in such a state of decay.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, they'd have to bulldoze it. So there are places on the island they can build that there's really nothing there to prevent them from building. The question is, what are you going to do with the main housing block? Are they going to tear that down? Are they going to modify it somehow as is? You know, that would be quite an engineering feat to do that. So there's obviously going to be a lot involved. It's not going to be just a, you know, President Trump signs his presidential order directive, and, you know, they take, you know, $5 billion to rebuild the prison, and a year from now it's open again. It's not going to be that simple. There's going to be a lot of environmental groups that are going to fight it. That's one of the things Alcatraz is a bird sanctuary. There are birds there that are protected by the government. Alcatraz is actually a historical landmark. It's So it does have protections because it has been registered as a historical landmark. And then, of course, if you go to the island today, one of the things that the parks people do is they incorporate the Indian history of Alcatraz, because for 18 months there was they were there protesting how Native Americans were being treated by the federal government, and they stayed there for a year and a half. And there's a lot of Indian iconography on the island that have been preserved, and they incorporate that into the talks. And so the Native Americans have a stake in Alcatraz as well because of that. So there are going to be a lot of voices. There are going to be a lot of people involved in this. It's going to be very, very lengthy. And then, of course, there are going to be lawsuits. People are going to try to stop the rebuilding, environmental groups or historical preservation.
Well, and you got, he's the biggest obstacle he has right now, Trump, is he's got all these activist judges that are stopping everything he's doing. So anybody that doesn't like a judge that doesn't like it can come up with a reason to throw something in his path. So yeah, he's got a long road ahead. And then just going back to like, if they did retrofit it and they did, I'm trying to think, because I've been in so many of those facilities, and, we have also not too far from us, some of the LA County jails, some of the newer ones that are just like literally a few miles from us. I mean, there's like probably equivalent of about 15,000 inmates, and they're all probably in about 5 different buildings, and they're all like different levels and stuff like that. But I'm guessing, the most you could probably get, to house there, if all that stuff, I'm guessing maybe 4,000 based upon, and it's like, which is the equivalent of like one of those jails. Like each jail probably has about 4,000 in it, like 2,000 here, or 1,000, stuff like that. So it's not going to be a big numbers thing. It's just going to be one of these things, I think, that he really wants to create.
I think he wants to create like an El Salvador type.
Yeah.
Well, you could take one cell and put 50 people in.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy, that one. I think they have like 40,000. And it's crazy. I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's like 20,000, just enormous. And they just put them all in there, but they wouldn't be able to do that here. No. They wouldn't be able to put like 20 guys in one cell. Although, when you LA County, when you're in jail, they slap you in there with about 15, 20 guys in the same cell sometimes, in those holding areas, and then you go to a smaller one where you only have 8, and you'll be in that for like a few weeks before you actually get like a day room or, a shared like gymnasium type room where they have like 200 guys, in there. So it's crazy. It's a crazy idea, but it's Trump. So he shoots for the moon. And like I said, I initially thought when that article came out, the first one, I thought it was like just a way for him to kind of have the press chewing on something, meaty, while he's doing something else to distract him from something else. Because that seems to be he loves to do that. He loves to throw out these hyperbole type statements and things. Well, we're going to go to the dark side of the moon. We're going to go, we're going to colonize Mars. We're going to do this, that. And then everyone's like, everyone starts researching and asking him questions about that. And then he slips through a bunch of stuff that he wants to get done.
I guess if I was going to put money down, it would be on the side of not happening.
Yeah.
I don't really believe that it will ever happen. So.
Well, I was just surprised that like I said, the director of the Bureau of Prisons was actually there, and he's talking to the media seriously about this. Like, no, we're looking into this. We're investigating. We're sending in engineers. We're looking at, like you said,
it could happen. I mean,
this isn't a joke.
Yeah, no. The other part of the article I forgot to mention is that the Bureau of Prisons was talking about how they're using private prison companies that are the ones that they're going to be doing, and that falls right into Trump's like purview, which he's a developer. He knows how to build things. Mm-hmm. He knows how like that, and he knows that. And so if he can do it through like private prison, like developers, people who create private prisons and stuff, I think that's the way he's going to do it in order to get it done quickly. Because then, you're not dealing with, you're dealing with government contracts, but the company has to hit these milestones to get things done. Like, when the earthquake in '94 that happened down here in Los Angeles, You know, a lot of roads were just taken out, bridges were taken out and stuff like that. And, you know, we thought for months, we didn't think these roads were going to be built back in years, but they brought in these private contractors and they gave them incentives. They said, listen, if you get this done in 3 months, you'll get like a quadruple, like double, triple payment. And they all got it done on time. In fact, one of the guys who built one of the Santa Clarita overpass here, which was like, it's this big interchange with like that. After he got it done under the time limit, and he retired and bought a NASCAR team. So there is incentive, and he knows how to do that. So if there was anybody else,
it could happen. It's very possible that this is a serious thing and that it could happen.
I tell you what, I would be definitely surprised, but I'm not going to rule anything out with this.
No, you can't. I mean, who would have thought this would? We've been talking about this. You know,
it's because you sent him the book, Ken.
It's all your fault, Ken.
I'm still going to be.
He's like, why did they close that anyway?
I'm still going to be blown away if his decision was based on the book that I sent him.
Yeah. Yeah. And, well, you know what? Listen, I mean, we're going to be up there in a couple weeks for your book signing. So hopefully when we're boots on the ground and we're going to try to do a podcast from Alcatraz Island. So we're working on that right now. So fingers crossed, see if we can do that going. And if you're in that area, please come to Alcatraz, get a book signed, get to meet these guys in the flesh, get your full Alcatraz experience here. But what's going to be really interesting is hear from people there that work at Alcatraz to hear what they think, whether or not that's a possibility, independent of because that's usually the people that are usually there day in and day out. I'm sure they're all kind of like, what's going on? What's going on?
Or they probably hear things we don't hear as they're
talking
with each other.
Exactly. Or maybe they're like, we don't know either. Cause who knows? It's going to be,
I would think if this does happen, and I emphasize the word if, I mean, they can look into it and they can come back and say, this is going to be a $10 billion job. It's going to take 4 years to do. And, it's not going to be a quick thing, no matter what you're going to do. Cause you have to, like, for example, one of the things about the prison, when it closed in 1963, operated for almost 30 years, was that all the waste was just dumped into the bay. Because back then you could do that. You can just go right out through the Golden Gate and into the Pacific Ocean, and you can't do that now. You can't dump waste into the bay.
Where are they dumping the waste?
Into the water.
No, I know, but right now, where do they dump the waste?
Oh, that's a good question. They do have
bathrooms. They're probably still dumping it not in the bay, but off the coast of California. Because I hate to say it, the beaches in California are not doing well. They gave us a warning down here, like from Ventura all the way down there, and they said do not go in the water. So the waste is going somewhere. If you live near a large body of water, like an ocean or that kind of thing, I think that's where it's independent of the landfills. Because the landfills are all filling up.
Yeah, because if you're going to have reopen a federal prison, you're going to obviously have to follow all these federal guidelines and things you could do in the past. You can't just do those things anymore and just kind of sneak it through. So I mean, there's going to be a lot of infrastructure that's going to have to be completely redone. There are no generators on the island. All their power is solar powered.
Oh wow!
There's not a huge demand for power on the island, obviously.
Yeah.
And if you walk in there, it's very dim, even in the daylight. Daytime it's very dim, doesn't let in a lot of light, but you have enough to keep it going with the solar power. Well, if you have several thousand inmates there, obviously you're going to need a lot of water, which has to be shipped to the island. There's no water source on Alcatraz.
Or they do a desalination thing, which they've done before. They just use that. I mean,
that's a very expensive to set up, and there's also a lot of byproduct issues.
Yeah.
That's why in California, because we have this perpetual drought in California, some years we have more rain than others, but because we have approximately 35 million people living in the state, the annual rainfalls is barely enough to keep us going. And so people say, well, just do desalinization plants on the coast. You got hundreds of miles of coastline, 500-600 miles of coastline to work with. You got all the water you need. Well, the problem is it costs billions of dollars just to set up a plant. And then you have all the byproduct stuff that's not very environmentally friendly. And you have to do something with all that stuff just to get clean water. So that's why they haven't built any on the West Coast. So yeah, you can't just have that on the island because you're going to have all this stuff going into the bay, and it's going to, pollute the bay and all the sea life that's there. And then, again, the environmentalists are going to be very upset with that. So
yeah,
I mean, if that thing is filled with like the worst of the worst, it's going to be scary. Because it's like, even when you go in there, when it's empty, it's a little scary. But like looking at that structure from the city or from Marin County or from wherever, it's like, it's empty. It's ghosts. It like has a haunted feel. But if it's filled with like violent criminals, I don't know. That's very scary.
Well, they're going to be federal. I mean,
criminals. It's the same as San Quentin. San Quentin was scary too, but I don't know. There's just something about Alcatraz, maybe because we know that people can escape.
Well, one of the features that they had on the island when it was open back in the day was single inmates in each cell. The cells are very small. You can spread out your arms and touch both walls with them. That's how small they are. And one of the reasons that they did that was so that, if you have 2 or 3 inmates in a single cell, you can conspire and start working together for escape plans or, revenge killings, things like that.
That didn't work.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the 3 were able to figure a way around that, but when you're by yourself for most of the day, it's much harder to work together to form a plan. I mean, you had eating time and you had time in the exercise yard when you can do that. Or if you're working in the shop somewhere, you can have little momentary conversations to work something out, but it's much harder to do that. It was a way to keep inmates from working together to do things that the guards didn't want them to do. Well, if you're going to house several thousand inmates, the only way you're going to do that is you're going to have to start doubling or tripling them up in the cells. And then you start having the issue of, okay, now they have all the time they need to work on plans.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with you, Cindy. I would hate to live in that city knowing that there was a prison that was housing the worst of the worst in the U.S. right across the bay, even though it's only a mile and a half.
I know.
Would
you love to be laying in your bed and hear the sirens go off and go, oh my gosh, someone?
We hear them sometimes here from when because they have different levels, and like they have like a work farm too, and sometimes the guys in the work farm just kind of walk off, and then they'll have.
I know, but Alcatraz is different. Like, you're living in Marin County, one of the most expensive counties in the country, and you can see Alcatraz from most of the hills, right, in that area. And you're looking at this place with the worst of the worst, and you hear the sirens go off while you're asleep. I would be terrified.
And if it does open and they were to house people like that, there would be a perimeter around the island also, with no boats, no traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was when Alcatraz was open. You can only get so close. So all of the shipping, all of the boat tours, everything like that, the Alcatraz race that they let people in the water upset, all that would go away. You wouldn't be able to get that close anymore.
And the fact that it's a federal prison, no one would be allowed in there. You can't even, because like that was the one thing that when I was doing that series, we tried several times, and we've in the past and currently tried to get talk to criminals inside federal prisons. You can't get cameras inside federal prisons at all.
Yep.
And now most of the prisons don't allow them, but definitely federal prisons, they don't. It's a different game.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm kind of like with Mike. I'm not holding my breath that this will happen. So.
Well, it's not going to happen soon. That's for sure.
Listen, if anything, it's great promotion for your book signing coming out right now, because people are going to be rushing to come to see Alcatraz.
Anybody who wants to see Alcatraz before it closes better show up and get a book.
Exactly. So, I mean, we'll continue to talk about this on other podcasts up until leading into the event, but just to remind everybody, it's the 12th, 13th, and 14th of June. And what are the hours going to be? Did you get the hours of when you guys are going to be doing it?
Mike, you remember that hours?
10 to 6. 10 to 6.
10 to 6. So,
I'm sorry, excuse me, 10 to 4. 10 to 4.
10 to 4. So 10 to 4 on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the 12th, 13th, and 14th on the Rock. and you'll get to see these guys and ask them questions, and hopefully we'll be able to do a podcast with anybody there to kind of question Q&A with you guys, and you guys can answer all your questions and stuff. So hopefully that can happen. If not, we'll still be there. And obviously we'll maybe just recording stuff just to kind of play on the podcast after if we can't do it live. But it's going to be exciting. I'm excited for you guys. This has been, you guys, you were shunned initially when you're going, and now you've been unshunned.
Right.
And now you got your own day, 3
That's
days.
awesome.
I'm sure your book publisher is pretty excited as we are. And so obviously they know about it, right?
Well, they bought a lot of advanced copies to have enough available, because the worst thing you want to do is sell out and not have enough for people and turn them away. So they had it. So they're very happy about that.
That's fantastic. Well, good, guys. Well, listen, great talking to you guys. Let us know if you get a hold of that guy, the filmmaker from the Travel Channel. I'd love to have him on. Excuse me?
I've reached out to him also. And, he's last time I talked to him was in January. He was heading out of the country filming something for the Travel Channel again. So hopefully maybe he's just out of the country right now.
Okay. Fantastic. All right, guys. Well, we'll talk to you next week.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right.
Goodbye.